In each branch of the U.S. military, there are two separate and distinct groups of people: officers and enlisted. Anybody with military service in the background will tell you that one group enjoys a wide latitude of power over the other. Of course, this depends on which group you happen to be talking with at the time. Welcome and hello. My name is Raymond Schaff. I'm the author of Confessions of a Level 9 Nerd. Please buy a copy at Amazon.com. When it arrives at your home, read it. Then for one last laugh, take it to a local book signing that has nothing to do with my book. Fold over the cover to hide my book title and hand it to the author to see if they'll unwittingly sign my book with their signature. If you get caught, just say it was an accident and leave the book with the author while running away from the book signing. Guerrilla marketing at its finest. And lastly, before I begin, if you're interested in how you rate on my Level 9 Nerd scale, I've listed all the requirements for being a Level 1 through Level 9 Nerd at the end of this video. Please sit back, get comfortable as we head into the following story about a freshly minted Army captain being outwitted by a lowly private. The tail wagging this dog ends with a truly moving experience. Chapter 2. Life at the bottom of the inbox. The overhead lighting systems began flashing their on, then off again messages of doom and gloom, laced with fail-safe klaxons warning of imminent danger. My trembling fingers kept searching the console keyboard for the correct override sequence entry that would terminate the emergency. Uttering under my breath, "It's going to work, it's going to work," I scanned the computer system's monitor for the slightest response to my keyboard pleas, only to see a vague outline of my father's face coming into focus. He was repeatedly flipping my bedroom light on, then off again, while telling me to wake up. It was time to go to work. Unable to focus on anything, I reached over to my nightstand and fingered off the alarm clock's klaxon, piercing the quiet morning. It was the beginning of the 1960s, and my reoccurring dream of working in high tech was turning into a perpetual nightmare. Pumping gas full time for minimum wage forced me to face the reality of having to do something drastic to avoid waking up each morning to that same old cup of coffee. My local U.S. Army recruiter told me that I can indeed realize my dream of working in high tech, and all it would cost was my scratchy signature on the dotted line. He said that the Army would change my life, and apparently he knew what he was talking about. Before the ink was dry in my enlistment papers, I found no need for that fresh cup of coffee each morning. My veins were coursing with pure adrenaline as I stood at rigid attention in front of a drill sergeant screaming at me to wake up. Why was he yelling at me to wake up when I was more awake than at any other time in my entire life? It became painfully clear to me that I had simply traded nightmares and allowed them to become a reality while desperately desiring to return to my old minimum wage go nowhere job. The sleep deprivation and non-stop physical training ended several months later on a parade field nestled in the center of the U.S. Army training base at Fort Ord, California. Time seemed to stand still for my buddies and me as we looked as thin as our ages at the formal graduation ceremonies. Moments after dismissal from the pomp and circumstance, our entire platoon raced over to the massive base's main bulletin board, hoping for a peek into our futures. Fingertips ran up and down the cold glass surface of the huge outdoor bulletin board, leaving smears of anxiety as we searched for our last name first name last, middle initial, and then stopping to read our next official duty assignment. The excitement evaporated into the meandering cool mist when everyone surrounding me realized they were being deployed to infantry units headed overseas to a place called South Vietnam. It was a bittersweet moment for me as my fingertip slid to a stop, partially covering my name. My eyes darted over the right side of the list to discover my deployment destination. There it sat so neatly out of place and sandwiched between the dozens of South Vietnam assignments. ADFSC, Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Understandably incapable of hearing or seeing much of anything at that moment, my friends slowly faded away from the huge bulletin board and towards their own destinies. The aching pit in my stomach reminded me that my recruiter was so terribly right when he said, "Son, the Army will change your life." In addition, I had no idea what ADFSC meant, but what I did know was that I was headed to the east, and all my buddies were headed to the far east, a much longer journey. When I arrived at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, I was surprised to find out that it was located spitting distance from the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. As a slick-sleeved private fresh out of military training, I spent my first few days navigating miles of manicured concrete sidewalks, trying to orient myself to the neatly laid out logic of my new base. The only thing lower than me at the time was hard concrete, the walkways that I shared with dozens of other wandering privates. ADFSC turned out to be an acronym for Automatic Data Field System Command, a small specialized unit of the U.S. Army whose job it was to apply modern technical solutions to battlefield situations. At last, I found myself working in high tech, as promised by my recruiter. My first computer experience was operating a Xerox 914 system. Okay, so it was only a copy machine, but it looked like a computer to me, and unlike my boyhood creations, it had buttons, lights, and switches that actually worked. The Xerox system belonged to the U.S. Army and cost tons of money to acquire and operate, just like me. In its time, the Xerox 914 copier was innovative technology, weighing in at around 650 pounds and producing Xerox copies at a blazing 1 copy every 26.4 seconds. It was a technological miracle. My first official training session in high technology came when the Xerox service engineer visited our site one afternoon to perform a strange ritualized maintenance procedure. First, he twisted an odd-shaped quarter-sized silver key into a side door lock of the Xerox 914 to swing open the twin servicing doors. Using both hands, he unlatched a heavy black electrostatic cylindrical shaped drum, sliding it out on its internal rollers and until it came to a gentle clicking stop. He covered the tips of his fingers on his right hand with a small white cloth and then proceeded to plow down into a shiny new tin container filled with Vista car wax. Little did I know that decades later, using Vista on a computing device would still be a topic of great discussion. He used the cloth in his hand to loop small concentric circles together while squeezing chunks of the melted peanut buttery wax onto the smooth glass-like surface of the drum. When the shiny black drum was fully coated, he knelt back slightly, waiting for a minute, maybe two, to pass as the drying wax shrouded the black cylinder in a layer of ghostly white. The engineer then allowed me to finish the job by polishing the drum with a clean cloth until it glowed with the same rich, dark black luster of my combat boots. I admired my work before using both hands to guide the black cylinder back inside the Xerox 914 and into the waiting arms of its self-locking latch assembly. Securing the side panel doors, I consummated my marriage to high tech by pushing the copier's start button and watched as the Xerox 914 gave birth to several sheets of paper copies. My commitment was sealed to a career spanning 50-plus years in computing technologies. About 90,000 Xerox 914 copies later, I found myself in a cramped break room cutting a military-sized wedge of cake in celebration of a promotion. Not mine, but my superior officer's promotion from first lieutenant to the rank of captain. We rarely saw eye to eye as he stood quite a bit taller as an officer, a point he drove home on a regular basis. His coronation to captain somehow turned me from being a private first class into his lower class private servant. However, we did share some similarities in that I was young and stupid, and he was young and arrogant. Empowered by a second silver bar on his shirt collar, the newly minted U.S. Army captain was eager to assert authority over his minions. Late one morning, he mounted a solo reconnaissance mission into my copier room, clandestinely observing me pulling a copy request out of sequence from a towering stack of Xerox copy requests choking my inbox. Standing a few feet behind me, and being the true officer and gentleman that he was, he barked into my ears, "Private, why are you pulling that copy request from the bottom of the stack?" I nearly jumped out of my skin as my entire train of thought derailed. Angered that he startled me, I pivoted around and shot back, "Sir, the gamma ray transmitter inside this new Xerox 914 machine radiates energy out past the inbox on the wall next to you. Please step back. Oblivious to the fact there was no such thing as a gamma ray transmitter device inside a Xerox copier, he took 2 sizable steps backwards, almost falling over himself to avoid getting hit with the non-existent gamma rays. Taking the better part of 2 seconds, he composed himself and remarked his original statement about how I handled my copy request orders. Unable to confess that I pulled those particular copy orders from the bottom of the stack because they were the easiest to process, I responded by saying, "Sir, these Xerox requests come in all day, sir. So I pull copy jobs from the bottom of the pile first, sir, for proper priority as they have been waiting the longest, sir." Several very long seconds passed before he broke eye contact and took a sheaf of papers he was holding and proceeded to stuff them under all the other copy jobs at the bottom of my work orders pile. Taking orders from the top is how it worked in the Army, but the new captain surmised that the quickest way to get things done in my work area was to weasel his way to the bottom. His nonverbal response concluded with a perfect pivot before leaving my area. Gloating over his newly gained tactical knowledge of my copy operations, I fetched his work request papers and processed them immediately to make him believe his intelligence gathering mission was a success. Following that incident, he would frequently sneak into my little copy room and quietly stuff his copy requests at the bottom of my inbox stack, pretending not to notice him as he slithered into the other offices of our building. I made sure to always do his copying request last. I took great pride in the fact that my new captain was receiving all the priority copying work he deserved. The response was swift and blunt when a fellow officer finally advised the captain, days later, that the Xerox 914 did not contain a gamma ray transmitter device. Worse yet, he discovered he was unintentionally lowballing his own copy request by stuffing him at the bottom of my processing request pile. Apparently, he had low friends that worked in high places, as several weeks later I received transfer orders direct from the Pentagon. A field unit attached to our division in the States would be expecting me in 4 weeks' time to begin my year in South Vietnam. I was a very young private that had not yet learned the art of turning dials, throwing switches, and most importantly, when and how to push people's buttons. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now here's a great, stupid smart, suspender snapping, level 9 nerd cleaning tip. Use a drop of Dawn dishwashing liquid in each of your lenses to keep them sharp and clean. And finally, it's time to unlock my wall safe for a safe, off-the-wall story about timing. Timing. It's a key part of a successful career. A lifetime ago, I worked as a systems analyst at a large data center. It was a newer building, packed with 100 plus computer technicians and a pair of huge IBM mainframe computing systems. Inside the pressure cooker environment, we quietly trailblazed our way through the information technology revolution of the 1980s. We had recently hired a receptionist to work the front desk at the main entrance. Being new to the position, she was still learning the names of all the employees working at the large complex. Late one afternoon, I was exiting the restroom adjacent to the front desk reception area when Gary Smith, a friend of mine, rushed past me towards an open stall. As I exited the restroom, I heard the mechanical click of his stall door locking. This is where timing becomes a very important part of the corporate world. I dashed up to the nearby desk of our new receptionist and asked her to page a Mr. Gary Inhead. I told her that he needed to come up to the front reception area for a quick meeting with me. The new receptionist, eager to make a good impression, activated the building-wide overhead public address system and announced in a firm voice, "Mr. Gary Inhead, please come to the front reception area immediately." She startled me by repeating the page to demonstrate that she was fully capable of performing her new job to the best of her abilities. "Mr. Gary Inhead, your presence is required at the front desk right now." She looked puzzled as I quickly headed towards the building's front exit security doors. She yelled at me, "Why are you leaving?" I told her our quick meeting was being held outside. As I exited the building, I could hear Gary Smith yelling what I think was my full name at the top of his lungs. It was hard to tell, as the tile walls and floors of that nearby restroom distorted his screams of anger. Days passed before the new receptionist would speak to me for that one, but eventually we became good friends. It was just a matter of timing. Please buy Amazon.com, and while you're at it, how about buying a copy of my book there as well? Cut! Please go to Amazon.com and buy a good book to read. Then buy a copy of my book. Cut! Please go to the Amazon River and toss a copy of my book to the piranhas, as a killer fish needs a good laugh once in a while. Cut! Mention military cadence to any veteran, and you will trigger distant memories of pain, fear, followed by a wry grin of accomplishment. I believe that the nonstop yelling from a drill instructor can actually alter your DNA. So here are a few samples of what I mean. The Air Force is quite basic. Hup, 2, 3, 4. Hup, 2, 3, 4. The Navy, on the other hand, goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. My Army drill sergeant barked, "Butt! 2, 3, 4, butt! 2, 3, 4, butt!" You get the Marines. Aye, aye, ooh! Aye, ooh! Then there is the Space Force. They're in space. They're good people. I've actually seen a video of them, and I have it, doing some really rugged training. Check this out. Pretty awesome dudes. Ooh!